Imagine this. You wake to the sound of your phone buzzing, not an alarm, but a notification from an app you don't remember downloading. Pale blue light floods your retinas as you scroll. Headlines about wars you can't stop, memes you don't laugh at, messages from strangers you'll never meet. Your thumb moves on its own, a reflex like a phantom limb twitching for a body that no longer exists. You rise, brew coffee, and open your laptop before your first conscious thought fully forms. Emails swarm the screen like gnats. Meetings blur into podcasts, blur into news alerts. By noon, your mind feels like a browser with 47 tabs open, each one playing a different video, each one muted. This is not burnout. Burnout implies a fire, a spark that once existed. What you feel is colder, quieter, a numbness that hums beneath the skin as if your nervous system has been rewired to run on. Low-grade dread. You function, deadlines met, groceries bought, small talk exchanged, but your inner world has become a fogged mirror. When was the last time you felt a want that didn't arrive pre-packaged by an algorithm? A desire that didn't flicker to life only after an ad or influencer told you to crave it? You scroll faster as though velocity could outrun the void. It doesn't. Here's the contradiction that will haunt you. You are living in the most stimulating era in human history, yet you are bored. Not the boredom of empty hours, but a deeper, more existential tedium, the kind that comes from being perpetually distracted from your own existence. Your ancestors risked death for moments of connection. You drown in a sea of it, yet touch. Nothing real. Your hands grasp at dopamine hits like a starving man chewing on wax fruit. You are overfed and undernourished, and the paradox gnaws. How can you feel so connected to the world, yet so estranged from yourself? The question isn't rhetorical. It's an aneurysm in the bedrock of modern life. We've built civilizations to eliminate discomfort, only to find that comfort rots. The brain, evolutionarily wired to seek novelty, now drowns in it. Every ping, every swipe, every auto-playing video is a micro-hit of synthetic adrenaline conditioning you to mistake stimulation for aliveness. But beneath the frenzy, a deeper truth throbs. You are being colonized, not by a foreign power, but by your own devices, tools that promised liberation and instead became neuroprosthetics, grafting themselves to your attention until you no longer know where their interfaces end and your mind begins. Think of the last time you stood in line without pulling out your phone, felt the raw, unmediated weight of silence, watched your own thoughts drift without clutching at a screen to anchor them. If this triggers a primal discomfort, you're not weak. You've been trained to fear the one thing that could save you, the terrifying, luminous expanse of your own unfiltered consciousness. We medicate this fear with busyness. We call it productivity, hustle, optimization. But strip away the euphemisms, and you'll find the oldest. Human addiction, avoidance. Avoidance of the questions that matter. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I love when no one is selling? Because to face them would require something more dangerous than exhaustion. It would require presence. And here lies the great unspoken terror of our age. We've conflated existing with being. You tick boxes, curate personas, maximize efficiency. Yet somewhere in the machinery, a shadow self whispers. It speaks in dreams you forget by breakfast, in the way your breath catches during sunset before you snap a photo instead of living it, in the inexplicable grief that rises when a song unearths a memory you can't name. This is your psyche's mutiny, a silent revolt against the tyranny of the trivial. The modern world has mastered the art of manufacturing crises to keep you docile. But the real emergency is subtler, darker, more intimate. You are losing the ability to inhabit your own life. Your thoughts are not your own. They're rehearsed scripts from timelines and timelines. Your emotions are not your own. They're viral contagions spreading through digital herds. Even your body has become a stranger, a thing to be tracked, optimized, and displayed rather than felt. So let me ask you directly, when you strip away the noise, the notifications, the narratives, the endless performance of self, what remains? Is there a you beneath the avatars? Or have you become a ghost, haunting the machinery of your own life, clicking refresh on a void that deepens with every swipe? This is not a call to unplug. That's too simple. A band-aid on a bullet. Wound. This is an autopsy of the modern soul and a manifesto for its reclamation. The path forward isn't digital detoxes or mindfulness hacks. It's a rebellion against the very architecture of your attention, a war for your interiority. But first, you must confront the invisible enemy, not your phone, not the internet, not capitalism, but the conditioning that turned you into a passive host for these forces. How did we get here? Why does the brain, that 3-pound universe of infinite potential, so readily surrender to triviality? The answers lie in a collision, a biology, philosophy, and a mistake we made centuries ago, a mistake about what it means to be human. The hidden problem and its psychological philosophical roots. You've been lied to about the nature of freedom. The modern world sells liberation as choice. Endless, frictionless, algorithmically curated choice. But what if this abundance is a cage? To understand why you're drowning in a shallowing world, you must first dissect the primal wound beneath the digital bandages. The human mind was never designed to be sovereign. Begin with Schopenhauer, the philosopher of cosmic futility. In 1818, he penned a truth that cracks open the modern condition. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Your desires, he argued, are not yours. They're biological scripts, societal implants, evolutionary ghosts. Fast forward to your Instagram feed. Every like hijacks dopamine pathways shaped by millennia of tribal validation. Every infinite scroll exploits the hunter's instinct to seek, always seek, even when there's nothing left to hunt. You are not choosing. You're being played by ancient code, rewired by Silicon Valley shamans who weaponized your own nervous system. But this is only the surface layer. Dig deeper, and you'll find Nietzsche's warning festering in the wound. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Modernity inverted this. We're given endless hows, productivity hacks, self-care rituals, life hacks, but stripped of our whys. Your ancestors built civilizations through shared myths, gods, nations, revolutions. You've been handed a void draped in TikTok trends and NFT scams. The result? A generation that would rather binge-watch a fictional hero's journey than endure the vulnerability of crafting their own. Enter Huxley's Brave New World, not as fiction, but as prophecy. He warned we'd be undone not by tyranny, but by comfort, by a culture that anesthetizes pain with pleasure until we learn to love our oppression. Scroll through your YouTube recommendations. Notice how outrage and cat videos alternate like lab-engineered dopamine slots. This isn't entertainment, it's pacification. The algorithms aren't just predicting your preferences, they're manufacturing them, using your boredom as raw material to build a prison of triviality. Yet the deepest cut comes from Jung, who mapped the collective unconscious and found shadows we still refuse to face. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls, he wrote. You scroll to avoid the ache of existential ambiguity. You curate online personas to escape the terror of true self-confrontation. Your authentic self has become just another brand asset, a hollow performance that buries the raw, unmarketable truth of your contradictions. Society doesn't want you whole, it wants you fractured, because fractured selves are easier to manipulate. Buy this to fix your body. Swipe left to cure your loneliness. Click here to fill the God-shaped hole with crypto. Here's the philosophical poison seeping through modernity's cracks. We replaced being with having, and having with appearing. Sartre called this bad faith, the act of lying to oneself, to escape the vertigo of freedom. You don't post sunset photos to savor beauty, you post to prove you've lived. You don't wear fashion, you wear approval. Every tweet, every LinkedIn post, every Strava update is a tiny betrayal of your potential, a choice to trade the messy glory of existence for the sanitized safety of perception. But why does this betrayal feel so inevitable? Blame capitalism's Faustian bargain. It promised self-determination but demanded your psyche as collateral. The 18th century Enlightenment preached reason as salvation, but birthed a monster, the myth of the self-optimized individual. You're told you can engineer your way to happiness, track sleep, microdose, meditate, but this reduces the soul to a spreadsheet. Viktor Frankl, Auschwitz survivor and founder of logotherapy, saw this crisis brewing. Man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life. But what happens when society sells him distractions instead? The answer is in your bones. You've become a citizen of what philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls the burnout society, a world where self-exploitation is reframed as empowerment. Your productivity apps are whips. Your wellness routines are shackles. Even your rebellions are commodified. Mindfulness becomes a tool to endure longer work hours. Digital detox retreats charge $5,000 to teach you skills your great-grandmother knew instinctively: how to sit, how to breathe, how to be. The true horror, though, lies in what we've erased. Pre-modern humans lived in what anthropologists call liminal spaces, moments of unstructured time where identity could unravel and reform. Rituals, pilgrimages, fasting, these weren't religious quirks. They were psychological necessities, pressure valves for the soul. Now, your liminal spaces are filled with TikTok transitions. Your rituals are Prime Day sales. You've been severed from the primal rhythms that once allowed humans to integrate their experiences rather than merely consume them. So here we stand, at the collision of biology and ideology. Your brain, a 200,000-year-old relic, is trapped in a labyrinth of supernormal stimuli: food engineered to bypass satiety, porn that outpaces evolution, information that replaces wisdom with data. The philosopher Gunther Anders called this Promethean shame, the self-loathing we feel when outclassed by our own creations. You resent your phone's hold on you, yet cling to it like a child to a blanket, because facing the alternative, the yawning abyss of unmediated consciousness, feels like psychic death. This is the hidden problem. We've externalized the human condition. Your ancestors fought lions and famines, you fight yourself. The battlefield is your attention. The war? To reclaim your inner life from a world that profits by its extinction. But before you can revolt, you must see the chains, not just on your wrists, but in your neurons, your habits, your deepest fears. The next layer awaits. How this silent war shapes not just minds, but civilizations. The unseen consequences. You don't notice the collapse happening inside you, not at first. It starts in the supermarket. You stand before 47 brands of almond milk, paralyzed. Which one aligns with your values? Which packaging is least offensive? Your prefrontal cortex evolved to solve famine, negotiate tribal conflicts, invent fire, now sputters like an overloaded CPU. This is choice fatigue, but deeper, a neurological betrayal. Every trivial decision drains willpower reserves meant for existential leaps. By the time you face a real choice, should I quit this soul-crushing job, confess my love changed my life? You're already bankrupt. You default to inertia. The world narrows. This is how civilizations decay, not with bomb blasts, but with a million muted whimpers. The brain adapts, as brains do. Neuroplasticity, once evolution's masterpiece, becomes your curse. MRI scans reveal that heavy internet users have diminished gray matter in regions responsible for empathy and critical thinking. Your neural pathways now resemble country, roads eroded by Amazon delivery trucks, fast, efficient, monocultural. You process information in bullet points, not narratives. You read tweets, not treatises. The result? A mind biologically incapable of grappling with nuance, a perfect prey for extremism, conspiracy theories, and the dopamine hit of righteous outrage. Consider the mere exposure effect, a cognitive bias where familiarity breeds preference. Instagram's algorithm knows this. It feeds you recycled versions of your existing self, the same politics, aesthetics, half-baked dreams, until you mistake the algorithm's mirror for a window. Your identity calcifies. You become a caricature, a stock photo of a human, while your shadow self, the parts deemed unlikable, unmarketable, unpleasant, festers in the digital unconscious. Jung warned of this. Whatever is rejected from the self appears in the world as an event. Watch the news. The collective shadow is now a global spectacle. Troll armies, cancel culture, climate denial. We weaponize our disowned selves. But the greatest casualty is time, not as minutes, but as meaning. Neurologically, your brain encodes memories based on emotional weight. Yet your days are a flat line of micro-stimuli, emails, TikToks, Slack pings. At sunset, you can't recall a single moment that mattered. This is time, famine, and it rewires your perception of existence itself. Ancient humans marked time through rituals, harvests, solstices, births. You measure it in deadlines and screen time reports. The future shrinks to next week's deliverables. The past becomes a cloud of forgotten passwords. Without a temporal compass, you drift into Sartre's bad faith, living as a series of reactions, never acts. Culture, once a tapestry of shared myths, now amplifies the decay. Social media's highlight reels have birthed a new cognitive bias. Comparison, dysmorphia. You don't just envy others' curated lives, you grow alienated from your own uncurated experience. A 22-year-old gazes at a sunset and thinks, this would get more likes if the composition were better. A first-time mother, instead of marveling at her newborn, agonizes over crafting the perfect postpartum journey post. Reality becomes raw material to be commodified, a psychic split that Hannah Arendt foresaw in the human condition. The world's alienation means that man has lost contact with himself as long as he lives in a world where everything is a means to an end. Yet the most insidious consequence is epistemological. Your grasp of truth, already fragile, has been shattered by ambient nihilism. Nietzsche predicted this when he declared God dead, but he couldn't foresee Twitter's trending page. Facts drown in the riptide of hot takes. Wisdom is crowdsourced. Conspiracy theories thrive, not because people are stupid, but because the brain's pattern recognition instincts, once key to survival, now spin chaos into coherent narratives, no matter how unhinged. You don't believe QAnon? You crave it. In a world stripped of grand narratives, conspiracy becomes dark sacrament, a way to feel agency in the algorithmic void. And what of love, of art, of sex? They've been algorithmized. Dating apps gamify intimacy into swipes, reducing courtship to a UI/UX problem. Spotify's Discover Weekly playlist replaces the ecstasy of stumbling on a basement band cassette with predictive analytics. Pornography, a realm once fraught with taboo and transcendence, is now an infinite scroll of dehumanized bodies, training your arousal patterns like a Pornhub Pavlov experiment. The things that once made us human now come stamped with metrics, heart counts, performance reviews, orgasm ratings. This is the silent holocaust of the spirit, not death camps, but death by 1,000 clicks. You are being hollowed out, not by malice, but by the market's invisible hand massaging your amygdala. The poet Rilke warned, "Our task is to listen to the threat of the unprecedented. But when your AirPods never leave your ears, when your eyes never leave the feed, how can you hear the threat? How can you feel the rot spreading in your attention span, your relationships, your capacity to care? The tragedy is self-perpetuating. As attention spans fracture, so does collective action. Climate change, too slow for TikTok. Income inequality, too complex for Instagram infographics. You doom scroll through dystopia, mistaking awareness for action, hashtags for movements. The bystander effect metastasizes into civilizational scale. Everyone watches, no one acts. Huxley's Soma is here. It's the dopamine drip of performative wokeness, the Netflix binge that anesthetizes your despair over melting ice caps. But here's the secret they don't want you to grasp. Your fragmentation is the system's fuel. A distracted population can't revolt. A bored population buys more. A terrified population clicks faster. The machinery feeds on your disconnection from yourself, from others, from time, from truth. It profits by your liquidation into data. Points, yet in the rubble of your attention, something stirs. A memory, a longing. The part of you that still knows how to get lost in a lover's eyes, how to weep at a symphony's crescendo, how to sit under an oak tree and feel the universe breathe through its leaves. This is your ghost limb, the atrophied muscle of presence. It aches. The ache is important. It means you're still alive. The rebellion. How to break free. The first lie you must unlearn is that freedom is something you acquire. You don't find it in a meditation app, a productivity hack, or a minimalist wardrobe. Freedom is not a destination, it's a rupture, a violent reclamation of your attention from the industrial complex that farmed it. To revolt is not to delete social media, but to weaponize your awareness until it becomes ungovernable. Start here. Your attention is not a resource. It is your soul's currency. Every click, scroll, and double tap is a sacrament to a God you didn't choose to worship. The rebellion begins when you stop managing your attention and start radicalizing it. This is not mindfulness. This is mind arson, history's greatest. Revolutionaries understood this. Consider the French resistance during Guillotine. They didn't confront the Nazis head-on. They sabotaged railways, cut communication lines, and disrupted supply chains. Your mission is analogous. Sabotage the cognitive railroads built to transport your psyche to market. When the algorithm demands your outrage, respond with silence. When productivity culture insists you optimize, waste time gloriously. Reclaim boredom as an act of war. Sit in a chair and stare at a wall until your mind, starved of stimulation, begins to hallucinate meaning. This is how Dostoevsky survived Siberia, by turning deprivation into revelation. But to revolt, you must first grasp the architecture of your captivity. French philosopher Michel Foucault revealed that power isn't just repressive, it's productive. It shapes desires, constructs norms, and makes you complicit in your own subjugation. You choose to binge Netflix, choose to grind for promotions, choose to envy influencers. Yet these choices are illusions forged in the furnace of manufactured consent. Breaking free requires a Nietzschean transvaluation to destroy the values you've been programmed to worship and birth new ones in the ashes. Here's the paradox. The most radical act is to do nothing. Not the nothing of lethargy, but the fertile void of the Zen monks, the odium of the Stoics. In a world that conflates motion with progress, stillness becomes insurrection. When you refuse to perform, refuse to consume, refuse to react, you create a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Into that silence rushes the raw, unedited truth of who you are. This is how Thoreau's Walden Pond became a manifesto, not by preaching, but by absence. But beware, the system will co-opt your rebellion. It already has. Mindfulness is now a corporate training module. Digital detox is a luxury commodity. Even burnout has been aestheticized on Instagram. To avoid this trap, study the dissidents who refuse to be branded. Emily Dickinson, who wrote 1-800 poems in secret. Van Gogh, who painted swirling skies not for clout, but because the madness demanded it. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who plotted against Hitler while writing letters on the art of being fully present in hell. Their power lay in opacity, in keeping their inner lives illegible to the systems that sought to exploit them. Your rebellion must be equally subterranean. Stop outsourcing your cognition. Read a book without underlining key takeaways. Watch a film without rating it. Have a thought. Without tweeting it, let experiences compost in your psyche until they mutate into wisdom. The philosopher Walter Benjamin warned of the aestheticization of politics. We now face the algorithmization of the soul. Resist by creating useless beauty, poems scribbled on receipts, dances performed in empty rooms, love letters never sent. Art that exists only to prove you're still alive. Here's the tactical blueprint. Practice existential espionage, a term coined here. Now, steal it. Infiltrate your own life. When the world demands noise, be a silent observer. Notice the scripted rhythms of your day, the reflexive reach for your phone, the autopilot small talk, the Pavlovian response to notifications. Document these patterns, like an anthropologist studying a doomed tribe. Awareness is the seed of insurrection. Cultivate sacred stupidity. Society pathologizes unproductive time. Reject this. Lie in the grass and name the clouds. Learn the Latin names of weeds, talk to crows, follow a snail's trail. These acts have no ROI, no metrics. That's their power. As Heidegger argued, thinking begins only when we have come to know that reason, glorified for centuries, is the most stiff-necked adversary of thought. Trigger cognitive dissonance. Deliberately, algorithms thrive on predictability, so become erratic. Read a fascist philosopher. Watch a film in a language you don't speak. Listen to music that repels you. Break the echo chambers, and you break the spell. Hannah Arendt knew this. The only antidote to totalitarianism is unpredictability. Embrace the discomfort of being rather than performing. Next time someone asks, "What do you do?" reply with, "I breathe. I notice dust motes in sunlight. I sometimes cry at bus stops." Watch their confusion, then their envy. You've just hacked the social contract. Build a shadow network. Forge alliances with fellow dissidents, not through Discord servers or meetup groups, but through glances, gestures, the unspoken recognition of those who've opted out. Share books with underlined passages. Leave handwritten notes in library copies of Camus. The revolution won't be televised, it'll be whispered. History's compass offers guidance. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios to drain fear of its power. Do the inverse, premeditatio profundum. Imagine the consequences of not rebelling. Picture yourself at 85, your memories a highlight reel of screens, your relationships reduced to avatars, your deathbed cluttered with unused potential. Let this horror fuel you. The rebellion isn't about destroying technology, but about dismantling its psychic monopoly. Use tools, but don't let them use you. A phone can be a camera, not a cage. The internet can be a library, not a slot machine. The goal isn't to escape modernity, but to infect it with humanity until the system coughs you out like a toxin. You'll know you're winning when you start experiencing Veblen's glitch, a term we'll coin here for when capitalist realism breaks down. Example, you're watching a Super Bowl ad, suddenly aware of the desperation beneath its polish, the boardroom meetings, the focus groups, the billion-dollar machinery behind this 30-second plea for your brokenness. It's no longer persuasive, it's pathetic. You've achieved ideological antibodies, but the true victory is subtler. It's the Tuesday evening when you realize you've spent 3 hours lost in a woodworking project. No photos taken, no progress posted, just raw, unmonetized joy. It's the conversation where you confess, "I don't know," and find liberation in the admission. It's the moment you choose vulnerability over virality, and in doing so, crack the simulation's code. The road ahead is not toward balance, but unbalancing, a relentless tilting of your psyche away from extraction and toward essence. You will relapse. You'll mindlessly scroll. You'll perform wellness. But each time you catch yourself, you etch a neural pathway back to authenticity. Remember, they want you tired, distracted, and addicted to hope. Deny them everything. Here's the secret they've killed to keep. You were never broken. Not by the distractions, the dopamine traps, the fractal trivialities. Not by the days you lost to scrolling or the nights you sold to hustle culture. The pores, numbness, the void, the ghostly sense of watching your life through a smudged lens. These were not failures. They were revelations. Whispers from the core of your being, screaming in the only language left to it. You are not a machine. Stop living like one. Let's pull the thread until the whole tapestry unravels. All your life, you've been taught. That self is a noun, a fixed entity to be built, branded, and optimized. But this is the grand delusion. The Buddhists knew it, anatta, the doctrine of no self. Sartre tasted it. Existence precedes essence. You are not a sculpture, to be perfected, but a verb, a perpetual becoming, a storm of contradictions that can only be lived, never solved. The modern world's cruelty lies in convincing you that your restlessness is a problem to fix, rather than the pulse of your aliveness. You've been hunting a phantom. The authentic self sold to you in wellness blogs and therapy speak is another commodity. The truth is messier, darker, more magnificent. You are the void, not the empty kind, but the cosmic kind, the primordial potential that birthed galaxies. Your anxiety isn't a glitch, it's the event horizon of your unrealized multitudes. Your boredom isn't a symptom, it's a strike against a world that swapped wonder for widgets. Depression? The soul's bagong, a refusal to keep laboring in the factory of manufactured meaning. This is the ultimate inversion. Your disconnection was the awakening. The itch you couldn't scratch, the hunger no app could satisfy. These were compass needles quivering toward true north. The abyss you feared, it was never your enemy. As Nietzsche wrote, if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. But he missed the corollary. Only when the abyss gazes back do you finally see. What does it see? That you've been asking the wrong question. Not who am I, but what am I for? Not how do I find myself, but how do I lose myself so completely in being alive that the question evaporates. The answer has been here all along, coded into every sunset you Instagrammed instead of lived, every kiss you staged instead of felt, every moment you sacrificed to the false idol of later. The purpose of life is not to transcend the human condition, but to drown in it. To drown so deeply in the mess of existence that you dissolve into everything you've tried to control. To let your curated self die in the waves, leaving only the animal who notices how winter light slants through bare trees, the child who laughs at the absurdity of a pigeon wearing a French fry crown, the primal creature who knows, in its marrow, that touching another person's skin is the only scripture that matters. This is the forbidden knowledge every system tries to bury. Presence is not a state to achieve, it's a surrender to the fact that you're already here. You've spent lifetimes trying to arrive, not realizing you were born arrived. The breath in your lungs right now, that's the miracle. The ache in your chest, that's the miracle. The unanswerable questions, the unresolved traumas, the laundry piling up as you read these words, all of it, the miracle. But here's the rub. You don't get to keep it, none of it. Not the love, not the pain, not the you that's reading. This. The universe borrowed stardust to make you, and it will reclaim its materials. This impermanence isn't a tragedy, it's the ransom note that forces you to show up. As Camus wrote, The literal meaning of life is whatever you're doing that prevents you from killing yourself. But he was half right. The meaning is in the doing, the terrible, glorious, unoptimizable doing of a transient creature hell-bent on aliveness. So, let's rewrite the script. When the void whispers, don't reach for your phone, reach for your throat. Sing off key, roar. Let the vibrations remind you that you're an animal with a death sentence and a Wi-Fi connection. When the algorithm shows you Armageddon, laugh. Not from denial, but from defiance. Plant tomatoes even as the world burns, because gardens are prophecies. Kiss like it's your first and last time, because it is. Fight the temptation to make your pain useful or your joy productive. Let them be wasteful. Let them be yours. The systems will keep scheming. The machines will keep demanding. Let them. Your revolution isn't out there. It's in the unmarketable moments that slip through the net, the 3 a.m. insomnia, when you suddenly feel your heartbeat as an ancestral drum, the stranger's eyes. You meet on the subway, both of you naked for a breath before looking away, the old song that ambushes you in a grocery store, melting your knees with a memory you can't name. These are not coincidences. They're breadcrumbs left by your unlived lives. Follow them. In the end, this is all that matters. The universe didn't create you to be happy. It created you to be astonished, to leave fingerprints on the fogged window of existence, to bear witness in your flawed and fleeting way to the sheer improbability of being here at all. Viktor Frankl was right. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. But that space isn't a pause, it's an opening, a wormhole to the version of reality where you're not a consumer, but a conspirator in the cosmic joke. So let's end where we began, with you. Not the you who's reading this, but the you beneath the words. The one who existed before language, before Instagram, before the world, etched its demands into your bones. She's there. He's there. They're there. Smoldering. You want to reconnect with yourself? Stop trying. The self isn't a destination. It's the weather, a chaos of pressures and currents you can't control, only inhabit. Let the machines have your data. Let the corporations have your labor. But when they come for your attention, your wholly squandered attention, bite their throats. The sun is setting as you finish these words. Don't take a photo. Let it die. Let it live. Let it sear your retina with its gold-green final breath. Tomorrow, it'll rise again, but never like this. Never now. That's the ultimate truth. You were never disconnected. You just forgot how to feel the current, so unplug or don't. But whatever you do, burn. Burn with the unbearable, exquisite knowledge that this is all there is, and it's enough.